I have found that removing the calipers is quite awkward. There's not a lot of space between the disc and the wheel rim, but it is made a bit easier by removing the pad retaining pins, which is what I'm starting with here. With the brake hose disconnected, I could undo the 2 bolts and remove the caliper and drop the pads out. And I remove the other side in the same way. For the master cylinder, I removed the complete assembly along with the reservoir. The connector for the brake light switch was quite corroded, so that took a bit of effort to get off. But once removed, I could just pull the whole lot off the bike. To get the pistons out, I stuck a bit of scrap between them, wrapped the whole lot in some rag and applied some compressed air. That moved all 4, but 2 of them will take a bit more effort to get out. To remove the 2 remaining pistons, first I used a G-clamp to hold one in place, wrapped a rag around the other one and used some compressed air to pop it out. And then partially reseated the one I just removed, held it with a clamp, and then popped the last one out after again wrapping it with some rag. And in case you're wondering about the rag, it's there to stop the piston flying across the room and potentially causing some damage or injury. The internals didn't look too bad, but I pulled all the old seals anyway. All the parts then got a thorough cleaning. I don't show it here, but they also got a good rinsing with some hot soapy water, and all the ports were blown out with compressed air. To get the grime off the pistons, I did end up using some Scotch-Brite pads with the hot soapy water. The result being a nice clean set of parts for reassembly. Reassembly was quite simple, bearing in mind of course that there are 2 different sizes of piston, which of course means that there are 2 different sizes of seals. I did lubricate the seals using brake fluid as I put them back in. And also lubricated the pistons. The downside of wearing latex gloves is that the brake fluid got all over the place, but nothing I couldn't clean up afterwards. The other caliper sections were all reassembled in the same way. When putting the 2 halves back together, I was really careful to ensure that little seal stayed in position. I decided to fit new pins for the brake pads. I completely stripped the master cylinder and gave all the parts a thorough cleaning. With all the parts stripped, I then gave them a good clean using warm soapy water. Looking at the condition of the parts, I was half minded to reinstall them, but for the sake of 40 quid I did go with a repair kit. This particular repair kit came with a warning. If you want to read it, you'll need to pause the video. I used a screwdriver to push the seal home, and I was very careful not to push the screwdriver through the seal. With the rebuilt caliper and master cylinder refitted back on the bike, the next thing to do was to swap out the brake hoses. The hoses that were on the bike did look like good quality steel braided items, but I binned them anyway to put a new set on. I bought this as a kit specifically for the bike, so saving the hassle of trying to measure everything up. When I ordered the kit, I opted for the black banjo bolts and associated fittings. I think they look pretty cool. In this kit, one hose goes from the master down to the right hand caliper, and the other hose goes from the right hand caliper over to the left hand caliper, which I think is how it was on the original. To accommodate the two hoses on the right hand caliper, there was a longer banjo bolt, and of course when I fitted it, it was important that I put a washer between the two banjos as well as at either end. The other thing to note here was that of the four banjos, one of them had a slightly less angled head, and that was fitted with one of the others on this caliper. You should just be able to see this in the video here. I don't appear to have videoed it, but once I'd torqued down each one of those banjo bolts and I was happy with the general layout and position of the hoses, I then tightened up the connections between the hoses and the banjos. Although old and a bit scruffy, the pads that came with the bike were a decent set of VBC double H's. So I refitted them, but I'll probably swap them out at the beginning of the track season next year. With all the constituent parts overhauled and new braided hoses fitted, that brings us to the end of this video. Next I'll sort out the rear brakes, which are a lot simpler, and then I'll cover off the bleeding for both the front and the back in a separate video. Thanks for watching.